Welcome to the Inside Pitch. I am Christopher Lockhart, the creator and administrator of this private Facebook group where screenwriters, creatives, filmmakers meet to ask and answer questions and exchange ideas and information on the craft and business of movie making. My co-administrators are Steve Enlow and our co-host for these events, Ramesh Santanam. And there you
everyone.
are.
Hey.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yep.
Good morning. We have to be animated today. You have to be animated today, Ramesh, because we have
animation. Yes.
That's right. By the way, we are not only streaming to Facebook, but we're also streaming to our YouTube channel.
Oh, we're doing that again.
We are, which means that we'll get another 3 or 4 people watching. But look, people do watch these things after the fact. Our McHugh interview has almost, I think, 90,000 views.
Really? Okay.
I mean, it's not like a million, but it's good for two schmucks like us. That's for sure. So before we bring them on, I just want to tell a very, very quick story because I thought it was interesting, and I can kind of use it even as a segue to our guests, which is I got a call earlier in the week from a coworker. He is a TV lit agent at WME, and it's a very big company, so I don't know everybody there, but I'll admit that his name was familiar to me. When he joined the company about a year ago, I read the announcement somewhere, and I remember thinking, gee, this name is awfully familiar to me. And then when I read his bio, just to see maybe we had crossed paths somewhere, but we hadn't, and I just let it go. Now, a year later, this very person is calling me, and I'm like, gee, I wonder what he wants. I'd read a bunch of TV pilots during the week, so I thought maybe it was related to that. Well, he informs me that he was a member of the Inside Pitch.
Oh.
That he had been a member for 10 years, and that before he started his journey, he found us.
Awesome.
And he ended up becoming a manager, and then he became an agent at CAA. And now he's an agent at WME, but he had his roots were right here. And I went back, just to see sort of, how he participated. He was very active, and that was why I recognized the name, but I never made the connection that it was an inside pitcher. And so there's a good lesson there, which is that you never know who you are communicating with in any of these public forums, including this one. You never know that the person that you call a loser, or stupid today could be the very person that you want to send a query letter to tomorrow. So
with a log line, by the way.
That's right. And by the way, this person had tested a few log lines in the group.
Oh.
Thankfully, he got some very cogent feedback. I'm not going to share his name, but there are a lot of people in this group, a lot of people that, of course, I recognize, and then sometimes people that I don't recognize who are very, very active in this industry. They are agents, they are managers, they are producers, they are studio executives. And so I think it really behooves everybody to always be professional. And so that's my segue here because, Bob has been a member of the Inside Pitch for a very, very long time also. And we've been able to sort of see his growth to now having, this huge movie. Of course, they also did the first PAW PATROL movie, but now, they've got this one, and it's huge, and it was #1 at the box office, and it just surpassed $100 million at the box office, which, by the way, Ramesh, I think, why don't we, you know something? We're going to do our Marshall McLuhan moment from Annie Hall. Because remember the guy on the page who said, "Oh, Paw Patrol hasn't made any money. It has to make $250 million to break even." We're going to pull these guys. We're just going to pull them over, just like Woody Allen does. We're just going to pull them right over and ask him if that's the case, because we can go to the source. You know,
Right.
Everybody in the internet is an expert, right? You know, they're an expert in nothing. But here we got the sources right here. Why don't you tell everybody who they are, and then bring them out?
Okay, our guests today are Cal Brunker and Bob Barlen, filmmakers who write, direct, and produce feature films. To date, their films have grossed more than $400 million at the box office. Their latest movie, is Paw Patrol, the Mighty Movie, for Paramount, Nickelodeon, and Spin Master, based on the hit TV series. This is the sequel to their film Paw Patrol, the Movie, which was released in theaters in the summer of 2021 and won the 2022 Golden Screen Award for feature film. Cal and Bob wrote and executive produced Son of Bigfoot, an original animated feature film released by Studio Canal and N-Wave Pictures. A sequel, Bigfoot Family, was released on Netflix in February 2021 and quickly became the #1 movie in the USA, Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand. Their previous animated features include The Nut Job 2 in 2017 and Escape from Planet Earth in 2013. Cal came to writing and directing features with a strong background in storytelling. In his years as a story artist, he was responsible for visualizing and staging some of the most memorable sequences in the hit animated films Hot and Here's a Who, Despicable Me, Ice Age 4, and Minions. Bob is a member of the Producers Guild of America and came to features through writing and producing both TV and high-end CG commercials. Cal and Bob, welcome to the Inside Pitch.
Yay! Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us on. We're big fans.
Well, look at that, Ramesh. Ramesh, you have a fan base. And Ramesh, A-listers.
Exactly.
A-listers are fan of yours. Well, gentlemen, we're fans of yours, as are every preschooler on the planet, that's for sure. And of course, every single parent that can plop their kid in front of Paw Patrol. And my son has a little half brother and little half sister, and yep, he's like, yeah, Paw Patrol, it's the greatest babysitter in the world. And so if anything, you are beloved. You guys are beloved.
We'll take it. We'll take it.
And of course, you know, $100 million at the box office isn't anything to sneeze at. Clearly, people are coming out to see this movie, and they're seeing it more than once. Also, so I mean, it's really impressive. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. We have to take issue with $250 million to break even. Our budget was $30 million.
That's what we said.
We're already in the black on this one.
There we go. Thank you, Marshall McLuhan. Yeah. All right. All right. So let's first of all, how did you two meet?
Bob, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I can jump in. I mean, we've been friends for many years. We met when I was in grade 8 and Cal was in grade 10, so we met in high school. And we've been working. For best friends forever, the best men at each other's weddings, that type of thing. We've known each other for a long time, and we both, grew up with a love of filmmaking. We grew up in a sort of a small town outside of Toronto, and we would watch movies together and, always go into the city to see movies that didn't come out in our town and that type of thing, go see Spike Lee's new movies, that type of thing. And so it was always one of those things where, we knew we wanted to do artistic stuff, express ourselves. We were making little short films and stuff like that. And then, we've been working together. When I went to live action film school, Cal went to animation school. And we, again, throughout our school careers, we were just working with each other and bouncing ideas off, writing things together. And then, when we finally got into making things professionally, it's all we knew and all we wanted to do. So we just kept working.
Could you ever have imagined that when you were, in the 8th grade, that it would have come to this?
I mean, for
#1 movies. And
Bob and I were looking back at just after we had our first screening. Paramount did a big thing, invited lots of families to the lot, and they had dancers and characters in costume and the whole thing. And Bob and I were looking back at a photo we took together out front of the Paramount gates 15, I don't know what it was, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, before we were in the movie industry, thinking, wouldn't it be great to one day make a movie for these guys? And we went and took a photo at the same spot a couple of weeks ago, and we're like, exactly to that point. It's been a real joy to get to see that through. It's a real privilege.
Talk about dreams coming true. So dreams do come true. And Bob, you said that you went to live action film school, and Cal, you studied animation. So, Bob, was the jump for you bigger? Was there a learning curve?
Definitely a learning curve. I mean, I would say because we write the films together, and I produce on it, and Cal directs. And as the director, I mean, Cal's level of animation expertise, in addition to story. I mean, I'll obviously let him speak to that. But for me, there was definitely a jump getting into animation because I was coming to it primarily through writing. And the storytelling and filmmaking, whether it's animated or live action, I think it's the same fundamentals. There is an entirely, I mean, like a genius level of animation and filmmaking knowledge you need to have to actually realize one of these things and bring it to life. And so, I'm still learning, I feel like, but it's, I mean, having made several of these movies together now, it's quite incredible.
So this is a stupid question, but I can be a stupid person. Cal, if you started as an animator, does that mean that like you drew as a kid, that you were an artist?
Yeah, so I grew up always drawing, and when I was in high school, this was kind of early internet days where it wasn't clear, all these kind of like career paths and stuff weren't clear at that point, that these were even options. All I knew was I didn't want a desk job and I wanted to do something artistic. And I found out about Sheridan College, which is this animation school in Canada. And it's like a lot of people from that went and did effects on Star Wars or whatever. So I was like, great. I want to work in movies. That's a kind of a path in, and I get to draw, and that makes sense. And then when I was in animation school, I ended up finding that I wasn't as obsessed with a very small skill set as a lot of my colleagues were in school. So there'd be a character designer or a background painter or something, and they just lived and breathed this specific skill set. And I kind of liked a lot of different things. I also played music, and I loved acting, and I liked writing, and I kind of realized, hey, my skill set is actually strongest at, I'm never going to be the best in any of these departments, but my skill set is I have a lot of pretty good skills in a lot of areas, and I can communicate really clearly to all of them, and I can bring these people together. And so that's where the idea kind of sparked for me that, hey, maybe I don't have to choose one little area to focus on. Maybe I can embrace that all, and being well-rounded is actually a value as a director. So that it was in college that I kind of cottoned on to going, yeah, that's definitely my path, and then chase that with all of my spare time and spare money, and went all in on that until we got an opportunity to do our first movie.
And Bob, do you draw at all other than stick figures, or?
No, stick figures are the extent of it. I can draw a cat or something where the legs go the wrong way. And so every animator and talented artist I work with, I think it's like, keep the pencils away from that guy, please, or use them only for writing exclusively. So.
Is it common to have non-artists writing scripts in animation?
Oh, definitely. I mean, what was it? Michael Arndt was writing on the Toy Story movies and stuff. So there's a long history of writers who are not from animation doing that, especially in the feature world. That's because the story is at the core what we're all doing there. So I actually, Bob said it was a big jump for him. I don't think it's as big a jump if you're a good writer writing in animation. The skills translate really easily. It's really about making sure that the things are visual. The story moments are visual. You're telling the story, which is true in all forms, but you can't really get away with like pages of walk and talk. That doesn't work so well in animation, so great dialogue is a part of it, but can't carry the day. You need a lot of kind of visual storytelling. So, but I feel like, Bob, it was easy for you, but I'm surprised to hear it was, because you killed it right out of the gate.
To be honest, that probably is more on the production side, because like I feel like my learning has been, coming from not an animation background, but you're right. I think it is, as you're writing, I mean, and we'll get into it a bit more, you are writing for, there's a few different readers. First of all, like in the case of what we're doing, there's a studio, but then also there are storyboard artists, and so they are then visually illustrating what you're writing. And so you do, when you are writing animation, as Cal said, you're trying to make it visual and trying to make it, again, also just rooted in a story. I mean, the same way that you do with any script and any screenplay that you're working on, it's, trying to make you care about these characters. That's ultimately what it comes down to, across the board.
So I don't really understand anything that goes into making an animated movie. I just know when I look at the credits, at the end, and just like, boy, this seems like, it's a lot of work, that it isn't just one person who's drawing, that, there's all of these various departments that all do different things. And so is there some sort of crash course that you could give us here?
I'll give you the shortest version I can of how it gets made. For context on the size of the crew, we'll be on a movie of our scale, which is not big compared to the Pixar's or Disney's or DreamWorks. We'll have 250 artists on, and it's several years in the making. We won't have that full crew the whole time, but if you want to think about it, well, I feel it's a wonderful way to make a movie. It's also kind of a crazy way. Our animators will do 3 seconds of footage per artist per week. So if you think about it, they are very much in the minutia of movement and how all this works. But jumping back to the beginning, that's just to explain the kind of size of the crew thing. But jumping back to the process, it all starts with the script, of course. But one of the benefits we have in animation, it's almost like being in the greatest film school in the world, is we get to make the movie almost in reverse, in that we spend all the money very close to the end of the process. Early on, we're writing, it's the two of us. Then we bring on a storyboard and design team that might be 20 people, some editors we bring on, and we'll actually take the storyboards of the sequences that we've written. We'll do voices for them. Even oftentimes before we've cast the movie, we'll just get actors or friends to come in, do the voices, and we'll cut the scenes in the edit to, we call it an animatic, to play to time with sound effects and temp score and all these things. And we build the whole movie like that. So we really get a chance to, all the things that when we were writing alone in our room that we thought were genius, some of them fall faceplant, and we got to figure out, okay, we got to get our way out of this. So either we've made a mistake in storyboarding or in performance, or we got to go back to the writing. And so we'll experiment with those things. And that's why I say it's like such a great film school, is your career's not over. You've got a storyboard, you get a chance to fix it a few times before you start spending the big money of bringing on the animators and effects and lighting and all those other great things. So once we've got, we go through and do the storyboard animatic, so it's all edited. We basically have a 80-minute movie with voices and everything, but it's hundreds or 20,000 black and white drawings cut together, like one a second, that shows the acting and the staging and all of this. Once we've got that, we'll screen that for the studio. We get notes. We do all of that at that stage. And then we go get it into the computer for the first time. And the first step is to translate these storyboards into a 3D environment and put a camera on it. So they use these, very, very crude models of the characters and backgrounds. And we actually shoot it like a film. We're dollies and cranes and focal length choices, and all of those things are happening at this point. And then those go back to the edit. We replace the storyboards, we cut them together, we revise and get that all flowing. But the characters aren't moving and acting yet. They're just kind of sliding around to the rough blocking of the scene. Once those are good, they go forward into the animation department. That's the department that brings the acting to life. And that's where they're working at only a few seconds a week, and their facial expressions and character posing and telling the story through performance. While that's all happening, people are putting, there are surfacing departments that make things look like the objects that they are, modeling departments that build the objects, a grooming department that puts fur on the dogs and combs it in a way that looks good, and all of those things. And then finally, those all kind of meet at the other end, and it goes into the lighting department, where we actually put, they're not real lights, but they're in the computer, very similar to, do you want a soft light? How much bounce light do you want? What direction is the source? Do you want to cheat it here to get a better lighting look on the face? So we're making all those decisions too. And then once that's done, that goes to the compositing department, where we'll put in depth of field, we'll put in camera shake or motion blur or lens flares, or bring the effects in. So that's the kind of process all the way through. And the thing that makes it such a juggling act is you've got a lot of people touching the same thing at the same time and trying to kind of manage that workflow so that the train doesn't get stuck and the cars start backing up and these 50 people have nothing to do next week. So once you start the train going of production after that storyboard stage, it's a real management task to try and use each dollar as wisely as you can and keep everybody kind of working at maximum efficiency and doing the best work they can. So it's a fun journey, but to people outside the animation world, it seems like a crazy way to make a film.
I mean, I need a Xanax after that. It just, I would be so, that just sounds like it's so stressful. There's so many things that I get that a director of a live action has to do the same thing, but this feels different because it's in pieces in many ways, where you can, in live action, you bring the actors to the set and you work on the blocking and the camera movements there, and you do the lights there. Everything is in one place. Here, it doesn't seem like it's that way at all. And so there's a lot of stuff that you have to stay on top of. That sounds very, very stressful to me.
It's a marathon for sure, in terms of literally in terms of pacing yourself out. But one of the things that is nice, as Cal mentioned, I mean, when you take, for example, the working with the actors, so we'll cast the film at the storyboard stage, and by the time we're finished with that animatic, for the most part, we will have all of our actors' voices in, because the animators are animating to the performance that's done by the actor. But the beauty of it is, because we do, rather than a live action film where, say, if you have a famous actor, maybe they're only on set for a week or something like that, we might have a week with someone who is a well-known actor, but we get to see them 5 different times throughout the course of production. So we'll do an initial recording session with them, get their performance. But then, as Cal said, we're rewriting, we're tweaking, we're looking at it. Maybe a new idea comes up. We come up with something when it's in the previs stage. And then so we can go back to them and record a few new lines and get back in. So there really is the beauty of animation is that iterative nature, where each time you get a chance to improve it and each department makes it better. And the nice thing also for us, from a standpoint of just being filmmakers, when you're watching that storyboard animatic, if you're not feeling the same emotion that you feel hopefully at the end of the film, it's not going to get better just by improving the look of it. It's like you can sort of really see your fundamental story, which is, of course, you're planning that out from the beginning, but it's a great kind of check to make sure that that's working. And I feel like if we did make a live action film, we'd still want to storyboard it and plan it out that way, because I can't even imagine, to just sort of go with a script and a hope and go like, I hope this works. It seems like, and I know you do table reads and things like that, but it's great to be able to see the film, come to life in that way.
You talk about actors. You worked with Kim Kardashian, was a voice here, yes?
Mhm.
Now, has she done voiceover before?
I don't think so. So the funny thing about Paw Patrol is it's so beloved by people who have kids that if you connect with an actor or talent, like Serena Williams is in this latest film as well. So there's another example of people who have kids in the Paw Patrol age, even if they're superstars in whatever their field is, they can be superstars to their kids if they can be involved. So it's wonderful. It opens all sorts of doors. And that's what happened with Kim. She really wanted to be part of it. And we wrote the part for her. And when we, to add on to what Bob was saying, oftentimes we'll get in with an actor and we'll see what's working and what's funny. And then we'll go back and we'll rework the scenes and come back again and kind of take what we learned with them. The big Taraji P. Henson plays the villain in this latest Paw Patrol movie. And when we recorded with her, there was all sorts of stuff she did naturally that was really funny. And we kind of took that, once we could hear her rhythm in the character, it helped us really just think about that rhythm as we were writing. And it really catered the character to her.
To that point, I think that one of the things, as we're writing and as we're acting it ourselves, we certainly have an idea of how it's going to sound, because in your mind you imagine it. But then the great thing is, when you're working, especially with talented actors, they bring their own vision to it, and then it is a balancing act of going. You never want to be in there in the booth saying, could you please do it exactly like this? Like, it's actually better to be open to that. But then sometimes it does lead to rewriting or even reimagining a character to really take full advantage of the performance, which is, again, one of those things of like building brick by brick this movie and having it come to life.
It's like that famous Orson Welles radio commercial about the peas. Have you ever seen this? I should say, have you ever heard it?
I've seen
where somebody's trying to direct him to do the voiceover, and it's just like he's selling peas, like canned peas or something, and he's treating it like it's Shakespeare, and he has a lot to say with the notes and the adjustments that he gets from the director. It's actually very funny. But you must give some direction.
There's to be clear, there's tons of direction, but it's really generally take someone like Taraji. We'll set the scene. This is what's just come before. This is how. This is what's coming after. This is how this character makes you feel. Play with this. I do a lot of like, what if direction, what if she's jealous of him, and then she'll play with the line, what if and so we'll kind of find it and shape it together. It's not that they just run wild. It's more that, when you're writing a script and you're imagining a specific voice, I always find that a wonderful process, because you've got their beat in your head. And so that's really, I think, what we're getting at is like, once you've cast this, and because of the process of animation, you get a chance to hear them do the part, and then you get to go rewrite the part, and that beat is really at the top of your head in terms of their rhythms and how you can just make the dialogue. It's kind of has its own sense of poetry or whatever to it that you can bring back to whatever they're doing. And so that's a really fun piece of it once you know who it's going to be.
Yeah. I'd say also sometimes we're even, because we'll be in for a couple hours with an actor. Even the first time hearing them, sometimes we'll go away. Sometimes on the fly, we'll be there rewriting lines, and we'll be passing each other notes and stuff like that. And as Cal is directing them and going, try it like this and try it like that, because I think the beauty of working with talented, amazing actors is they just bring stuff to life, and you really hear hopefully their raising the stuff that you wrote to a whole new level.
Our voices sweeten sometimes because I'm always amazed, like when I hear certain actors doing voices in animated movies, they're just so crystal clear. I'm just like, wow. I mean, God, they sound like so good. Like they never sound like that in, you know, like their live action movies.
So there's two things. One, we don't have to worry about keeping a boom mic at a shot, so we close mic them and far mic. We normally have two mics set up always, so we can, if they're too loud, we've got the second mic to kind of back that up. But also we will go through and do selects through all these takes. Say we get 10 takes of each line or 5 takes of each line, whatever it is. We will often go and take cleaner syllables or words or something really wonderfully idiosyncratic. The voice cracks in a great way, but it works for that moment. We'll take that and put it into a line where everything else is working better. So Bob and I, part of our process is we do the voice selects ourselves by hand and piece them together by hand ourselves to make sure it's, at least for the first step, it's sounding the way we heard it in our heads. Then we work with our editorial team, and some of those won't work in context as well, in which case the editors will get in and swap them out. But our first pass is trying to recreate that. So to the sweetening standpoint, it's more like doing a vocal comp for a singer, right? Is they'll take all these takes and they'll choose the best. Oh, she's got this great breath here, and we'll do. So it's not crazy, but, and some actors more than others. Some actors have a rhythm inherently that gets weird if you start to break it up, but others, each take is so wonderful and so different that you want the all-star best of hits at the end, and you can kind of build these wonderful performances as long as you're focused on keeping it sounding natural. To your point, it's almost like a superhuman performance you can put together in terms of clarity and all those things.
Yeah, interesting, very interesting. So what is it like? Because Cal, you've worked on some animated films, some very, very big, very big budgeted animated films. And so what is the difference? What's the difference from, like a Pixar movie to doing something like a $30 million animated film?
So I think, to clarify too, just my work on those other bigger films is as a storyboard artist, not as a writer or director. Just
I get that. Yeah.
Yeah. And just for anyone watching. But the big difference is, apart from all of the kind of visual stuff, is they can afford more effects and they can work at half the speed. The animators can do less, can have more characters on screen. You can do all of the same kind of things as live action budgets going up. In the animated world, time is the big thing in terms of getting the story right. Is a Pixar movie, oftentimes you'll hear about 6 years, 4 years. Certainly we had 2 years on this last one, so we have to get pretty close to the bullseye with every dart throw. We don't have the ability to throw out 15 minutes of animation because we got a better idea. So it's a more of a I think trying to get as close to the bullseye on the first try as possible, and trying to be as efficient as possible with our resources, because it's very easy. $30 million can either look like $50 million or it can look like $15 million, just depending on if you're careful about how the resources are spent. And so I think if Bob and I do that both through the making of it, but also through the writing. We'll write our way out of problems as we go. And so I think that's, if we have a strong suit, it's being able, I don't think there are many people doing movies at this budget level that are able to still play broad theatrically. That's kind of our secret weapon. I don't know of any animated features that are in a 30 million budget range that are coming out wide theatrically in North America anymore. Like that's of a earlier time. So we're that's our thing.
You mentioned fewer characters. I thought that was interesting because I guess it costs more if you have to draw more characters. So Bob, is that something that you are considering when you're writing the script? And also with Paw Patrol, you obviously have characters that you must include.
I mean, yes, on both fronts. So yes, Paw Patrol being an ensemble film, although I mean, one thing more specifically to this film, even though it is a big ensemble film, one thing that Cal and I always do in every film that we have written is really try and focus it on the, emotional core of one character. In this case, that's the character of Sky, and just basically because as a viewer, you relate to a character in the film and sort of see yourselves as that character as opposed to like a team of people. And so I think that even when writing that, I would say that the budget is something that, because we are both, we make the films as well, we are very aware of that. But I think that because we make them as well as write them, it allows us to write to budget. So for example, we can meet with the effects team and say, we need someone to turn into water. What is a way to do that? We don't want to chase a specific one thing that's going to take 10 times as much. If we can do it for kind of a more reasonable amount, we can then take those resources and put them elsewhere, and so we can write to that. So I think that we're not it's not limiting our writing, but we're just not writing ourselves into a corner, because then we are the ones who are written into that corner when we actually have to make it.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. And now Paw Patrol started out as a TV series, yes?
Yes.
All right. And did you work on the TV series? No. So
No.
then you go ahead, Cal.
I was going to say, no, it's been running for 10 years now, the TV series. In the beginning, when they decided they wanted to make a movie, they went out to talk to some different directors at the beginning. And I have two kids who are currently 5 and 8, but at the time were, I don't know, 2 and 5 or something on the first movie, maybe even slightly younger. And Paw Patrol was playing at our house a lot. And so I saw how they would enjoy it, and I would sit with them sometimes and watch it. And when I went in to kind of pitch my take on it, I had a few things that I felt strongly about the show. And part of my pitch was going, we don't need to reinvent this. We need to featurize it. Like, we need to kind of capture the charm of the show and bring it to the big screen. My pitch is not, let's do something totally different with that, because I had this experience with my kids and I was thinking, what would they want to see? What would I want to take them to? And then we started talking about the story and where we should take the story. And that's when I said, well, Bob and I will write it. And so we jumped in and the rest is history, I guess.
But it obviously was a good pitch. I like the word featurize. I haven't heard that before.
Yeah.
I use the word cinematize sometimes, but I like the word featurize. Yeah. And so what does that mean exactly in relation to taking a TV series and featurizing it?
Sure. And I use the word, we always, in the animation world, we talk about television or feature animation. That's the differentiators. So featurizing was like, how do we pull this into a big screen experience? And I think it goes to, it starts on a story level, which is how do you have a kind of universal theme, simple enough that kids are going to be able to understand it and hang on to it. And that, though the theme hopefully is universal enough that adults can apply it to their life in some way. Not that it's a lesson that they're going to take home, but that they can get emotionally engaged with the same story. And so that makes an opportunity for them to watch together in a great way. So we always, that's at the core, finding the story. And then from a visual standpoint, my pitch was always from across the room, apart from, some prettier backgrounds and stuff, the characters should still look like the characters from Paw Patrol. But as you get closer and closer, the details should kind of open up, and we should see fur, and we should see the subtlety in the acting on their face and the anatomy of the dogs, instead of kind of, what they call rubber hose legs, which is the old kind of cartoon style Like they should have real dog anatomy so that they can move and behave like the animals we have in our homes, and they can do these kind of more dog-like things that will bring us closer to the characters and to the reality. And then lastly, like one of the big things we, as part of our pitch, was saying we really want to make sure that as much as possible around the dogs and the amazing kind of rescues they're doing, we keep the world fairly grounded. The temptation in animation is to go broad and cartoony on everything, but then the audience is not going to care if somebody is in peril or somebody. And so we tried to keep the rest of the world grounded so that the heroics of these dogs would end up being something that felt elevated in that world, and something that the peril felt real, and all of those things. So that was the I don't know, that's the first step of featurizing, I guess. That's that we took it into.
Yeah, it's so interesting the way you would look at these things, because you clearly look at these things in just a very very different way. And so then when you're developing the script, are you thinking about like animated moments, or like this would look great, or are you just thinking about it as a script, like, oh my God, this would be a great, like a really great dramatic moment, or this is a great set piece?
I think it's more like that, the second one. I think when we think about great animated, so I think a few things. One, the big dramatic moments are probably first and foremost. Then the kind of set piece. We know we have a kind of some kind of rescue scenario. Then we will go, okay, what would be a great fresh visual way to tackle that? But it's still thinking about it as any set piece in a live action movie. The one thing that does feel unique to animation, maybe not animation solely, because it's also certainly strong in the world of Charlie Chaplin or any of those other things, but is the one animation specific thing we'll try and look for is like, what is I don't know, I heard an acting teacher once call it, what's the game of the scene that the audience will understand. For example, in the simplest form, like a kid is sneaking behind me to try and get a cookie out of the cookie jar, and the parent keeps turning but missing, and the kid that's like the game of the scene. So if the audience can understand that, and you watch these animated characters play this thing, it's a wonderful thing for them to engage in. So we'll look for moments like that in the storytelling, where it would be like the audience gets a huge, when you can get them to participate like that and anticipate what the characters are going to do, the animation really kind of comes to life in a similar way to a silent film, that it just like makes a connection with the audience in such a great way. So maybe those three things together. Bob, do you have anything to add to that?
No, actually, though, you mentioned something which I actually think just ties into the writing process, a little bit of a tangent. But one of the things that I think that Cal and I did, which sort of certainly elevated our writing, is we took acting classes, sort of more at the start of our career, which took, like, they were professional level classes that we had to audition for, where we would then have to do scenes on camera and take on camera study. We are not actors ourselves. We both done a little bit of voice acting, but it was really a case of going, until you're given a scene to memorize, and then you look at, like, if you put yourself in the actor's shoes, and you, like, dialogue that flows is much easier to memorize, something that leads from A to B to C. And so it was, for me, certainly, and I think for Cal as well, going
too, for sure.
to be on the acting side really made us certainly think of the writing in a whole new light and appreciate every line you're putting down needs to have an intention. And that's where, like, as Cal was saying, we had some great acting teachers, the game of the scene and all these sort of moments. So in a more general and broad sense, I would certainly recommend that if you are, a filmmaker, and if you're a screenwriter, studying all the related, art forms is absolutely, crucial, I think, to really get to the, just understand what you're doing. You're not handing an actor something that you yourself wouldn't have to perform, or you've been in the shoes of someone going, "This is what I have to say." I can't even remember the order this goes in because it seems so random. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Great advice. You know, you can take an acting class at a local college. You know, there's like extension classes. It doesn't have to cost you a gazillion dollars either.
of course,
So now, when you're structuring your stories, especially something like Paw Patrol, where your audience is probably, and I'm not that familiar with the TV show, but I'm assuming, you know, that the episodes are 20 minutes, and now you're writing a, you know, 90-minute film. Do you consider the attention span at all, and are you structuring your stories in a way, you know, kind of like the Joel Silver whammo chart, you know, where like every 10 pages something's got to happen, you know? Do you think in terms of that, especially when you know that the majority of your audience is going to be young?
I don't know that we think about it. We certainly are efficient. I would say that that's probably, we're not thinking about every X number of pages, nothing like that. But we certainly try to not overstay our welcome on any scene, and when characters are getting dialogue-y, we really, where there's a lot of kind of back and forth, if it's not hugely dramatic, story important, or funny, we will go, how do we do this faster and more efficiently? Really, more efficiently is the thing. And I think our natural rhythms of that we've kind of built up over the years dictate a certain pace. So I think that happens kind of naturally for us. But in terms of, we are not that we let the tail wag the dog, but we're certainly believers, especially for a younger audience and a family audience, in pretty clear traditional story structure. It's not like we just fit pieces into it, but we'll generally figure out the story in a free form way, and then we will troubleshoot that story by overlaying structure and going, you know what, we're not telling the audience really where we're going in the first 20 minutes here. We need to rethink that so that they have a direction and they can get on board. Okay, so we'll kind of do that, and then usually, funnily, as we've been doing more and more movies over the years, the hardest thing, it doesn't come up front for us, is to figure out that kind of simple theme for what the movie is. What is the movie about? We don't start with that because we find you can, maybe somebody can do it. For us, it can end up feeling like a preachy thing. So we try and figure out the story, and then we kind of bang our heads against the wall for a long time going, what is this about? And then once we can kind of unearth what that kind of single clean idea is, then we can go back and we can revise all around and go, oh yeah, this is what we were trying to say that we didn't know, and now we can make it all fit into that. So the first Paw Patrol movie, for example, is a story, at the theme at its simplest is, heroes get scared too. Just because you're scared doesn't mean you're not a hero. They push through, and pushing through the fear is what makes them heroic. And it took us a while to kind of figure out that idea. And so is this idea of how we deal with fear. And that ended up then being applied to everything. And funnily enough, just through the winds of chance, that our movie about fear came out right as the whole pandemic thing was coming to an end. So it seemed like it really resonated, especially with young people that were trying to figure out how to deal with this whole thing. They had a little thing to go, it's okay to be scared. You can still be a hero by learning how to deal with that fear. So trying to find those kind of core themes the more we do this, the more we're like, that's the whole ball game. If you can figure out that thing and articulate it cleanly and clearly and apply it to the whole story, it really, the audience feels like they're in good hands then. And it's never apparent to us until late into the process, which makes it a scary process, because you know you're making this movie and you're not quite sure what it is yet. So you're kind of you're chasing that always.
Thank you. Who like, what did you watch when you were growing up, like Hanna-Barbera or something? You know, like I always like, and again, I'm no expert in animation, but I loved and I still do Max Fleischer, you know, like the early Popeyes and Superman and you know, did you have anybody that inspired you?
I think watching animation growing up was the kind of Chuck Jones, Warner Brothers stuff, and Disney family stuff. And as I got older, kind of Brad Bird, Iron Giant, and into you know, Incredibles and all those things. But I also grew up, you know, loving Spielberg movies and all the kind of stuff that our generation grew up watching. And I almost think of I love animation, but I also think about the world that we're in is, this is where people are letting us make movies, so we make animated movies. But I don't think of them specifically as animated movies. It's just that's where people said, yeah, we'll give you a bunch of money to make it here, and we're like, great, that's what we're doing.
Interesting. So you would make a live action film if given the opportunity?
Oh, I think for sure. Yeah. If it was the right movie and we felt we could do a great job with it, we would love to do that.
I think to that point, it's really like, as Cal was saying, those storytelling fundamentals, it really does feel like we are trying to write, what we liked growing up as kids, which is not just animation, although that certainly plays into a factor, but really going, and even now, I mean, I feel that when we are writing for ourselves. We're still the first audience. We're never sitting around going, what would a kid like? What a kid's like? And I find that people who are doing anything for young people who kind of have that attitude, they end up making weird stuff, or just sort of, if you can never hit this moving target of what the kids like. At least if the core is with you and you go, we love this, hopefully other people will too. That's sort of like, otherwise I don't really know how you kind of hit that bullseye, because it just feels like, kids will like it. It's not the attitude that you have, certainly, like when I think when entrusted to do this. I mean, one thing for these films, because they do go from quite young, I mean, a lot of people have sent us messages, hundreds of people saying, this is my kid's first movie at the theater. They're taking quite young kids, and I mean, for us, that's a huge honor, but it's also like, you go, wow, you want to be some kid's first movie, you really want to make sure that it's good and make sure that it holds up. They don't that they have a good time there.
And we had quite a few people in the group who shared that with us, and I think that I remember the first movie that I took my little brothers to was Race for Your Life, Charlie Brown, which was an animated film. Probably wasn't very good, but whatever. And I'm sure that one of the first movies that I took my son to, was probably a Pixar movie, so it does seem almost to be like a rite of passage, huh? That we are probably introduced to films through animation. So in some ways, you're right. You have a very big responsibility to the future filmmakers of the world. Good luck with that.
Thanks.
Ramesh, why don't we open up the floor, because I can see that there's a lot of questions building up here. And some of them are very long.
Okay, yeah.
Some of them like paragraphs. Okay.
I know it's
okay, but that's we love everybody. Everybody's questions are welcome.
I see one here that's a good one. Is, when did you officially realize that you were a writer or feel like one? And I think I don't know that
feel like one. I like that.
I don't know that ever happened for us. I think we wanted to make movies and realized that there really aren't like great things out there waiting for you to direct. That was never a world that we saw. And so we decided we wanted to kind of lay the plan for the thing that we would end up making. And it was writing then out of necessity. And I think it, funnily enough, really helped our writing, because we weren't thinking like writing was a separate skill. It was filmmaking. It was going, how is this going to appear on screen? Which I think is ultimately the trick of great screenwriting, is to go, you're really directing this. You're just doing it on the page. And that's how we approach it. I mean, I'm not saying go crazy with camera direction, but I mean that you're trying to tell a story in cuts, ideally, in a screenplay form, and in the juxtaposition of scenes and stuff. And that was where it started for us. And I guess we've done it enough now that, and we get hired as writers, that we think of it that way. But it's always been about making films and trying to make the best blueprint we possibly could. It wasn't kind of writing for writing's sake for us.
That's interesting, just coming at it from a filmmaking perspective. And so many people that write scripts, they have no idea about the filmmaking process at all. Again, I don't think that that's a horrible thing, but I think obviously is very beneficial when you do understand. I used to say that, and I still do kind of believe this, that the true screenwriting experience it doesn't come full circle until the screenwriter has a film produced, because
absolutely,
because there's so much in that process. And so if you write a script and sell a script, to me, you've only gone like halfway around the globe. That's a great journey, like congratulations. But to really complete the voyage, you got to get the film made. Even if you're not involved in the filmmaking process, you can still see in the end what your script turned into. And that in of itself is an amazing learning experience, because you can often understand why a scene was changed, or why they cut something, or why they did this, which then helps you the next time you write your script, because you might tend to think a little bit more like a filmmaker.
Absolutely. I think that for us, even before we ever worked in the feature world, we both, as Cal mentioned at the start, we both made short films. We made them together. And even that, I mean, because obviously you can get caught up in, it's hard to make a feature, even a low budget feature. It's hard to make a short film as well. But even that gives you, as a filmmaker, if you can write, direct, and edit a 5-minute short, it's an achievable thing. But you learn by the time you're done that, your writing will be 100 times better. And I mean, we feel so lucky after every feature. It's almost like on the last day of making any feature, you feel like, now I know how I could make this movie, and you just take so much learning with it.
When aspiring screenwriters ask for advice, what would you do, one of the things we almost always say is like, see if you can shoot a scene on an iPhone that you wrote, because the stuff you think is funny, or the amount of dialogue, you just learn so much actually seeing it. It doesn't have to be, it could be two people sitting at a table, but it's going to be on an iPhone with no lights. But just the process of actually seeing this thing realized is such a learning experience, and so valuable. I think to your job as a screenwriter, to your point, Chris, is going, that's the film school, is finishing the first film and going, oh, okay, I had a totally different picture of what we were doing here. Now you have kind of a path forward, and it speeds up your learning at that point, because you get such a rush out of the stuff that worked, that it gets seared into your brain. You're like, okay, that works. I know how to, this was slow and heavy, and okay, how do I play with this thing over time and make sure that the the journey that the audience is going through is paced appropriately and stuff, as well as all the minutia of like scene writing. How does the bigger thing fit together? Yeah, totally.
I think we've had the experience, thankfully, of we've sold scripts that other people have made, and then we've also made our own movies. And even that, well, we've had great collaborators. It is always just interesting, as when you are the writer on a project but not making the film, there's 9 million choices that happen, and it's probably unlikely that someone's going to make all 9 million exactly the same as you. So even if you are working on something, even if it is that iPhone film that Cal said, at the very least, having a small thing that you can control completely from beginning to end is really useful, because the more people that get involved with something, it just changes, and it's sort of you see that. And you also, I think, as when you're writing only on a project, you need to hand that over, because then the director or the producers, the filmmakers are taking it, and then of course they've got to work with it too. So both experiences are very enlightening.
Yeah, and the iPhone idea it's really ideal, because we all have these phones, whether it's an iPhone or whatever. You can shoot. My phone shoots in 8K. I mean, it's
crazy.
It's kind of useless because you can't anymore. But it's like it's pretty amazing, the very technology that we have in our hands. And you can, even if you shoot a scene from a script that you've written, just to sort of play around with it, and then learn through that process without having to spend a gazillion dollars. Because obviously making a short film, that can be very cost prohibitive, but not if you're using your phone. And
you can play both parts, right? You can shoot yourself as both sides of the conversation. Like, there's just the turning it into something that you watch is such a valuable experience. Totally.
I agree. Ramesh?
Okay, here, Anthony has a question. He said, I have a letter of intent from 2 relatively big names for voice. The script has a lot on his insect-based project. The script has a lot of love. However, it's like traveling to Mars and trying to climb Mount Olympus to move it forward. What was it really like to get your first project off the ground, and what advice would you give once you get the offer to read?
Once you get the offer to read?
Yes, to be read, yes.
Okay.
So I think, for Cal and I, and I'll let you speak to this, Cal, sort of more, but it started, for us, it was not the clean thing of writing a script. We finished it. This is a great draft. We mailed it off. Someone said, we like the script and we're going to make it. It's always been messier than that, of going a movie that was in progress, but then something went wrong and they needed help with the writing, or we needed to do that. Like it's and I think that some people have that experience and it sounds great, but for us, it's always been much more coming in to help someone with an existing project where they needed help. And basically from that, them knowing us because they had seen our work, whether that was our short films or other things that we had worked on. So having a body of work, even at a high amateur level, before we jumped into the professional side of just seeing enough, or commercials we'd made or anything like that, just sort of showing that we knew our way around storytelling a little bit, and then coming in to actually assist. It's always sort of a messy side door, at least in my experience. Very few people have a very clean entry of like, I won the Nickel Fellowship, then Hollywood called, and I went, now I work at Warner Brothers or whatever. And so I think embracing that is the case of going like, it's recognizing those opportunities, as well as being willing to help out peers and friends and other people. Like it really is. And I think more so too, just always continuing to work at it and sort of letting people know that that's what you're doing. And both anyone who had ever met Cal or I in the last 20 years knew that this is what we wanted to do, and they'd seen our efforts independently to grow at that and to become filmmakers.
I mean, to add to the unfortunately, I don't think we have the answer to that question, because we've never had any success traditionally kind of walking up with a script and getting it made. We optioned an original script called Son of Bigfoot, which ended up getting made in Belgium, and Studio Canal put it out. That was great, but that was very much like we finished a spec, sent it around to some places, and somebody said they wanted to option it, and then nothing happened for 18 months, and then we heard someone's making it. So it wasn't, I mean, that was after we'd already had a film that we'd put out into theaters. So in terms of the messy side door, for me, from a directing standpoint, I got my opportunity because I had a skill that wasn't directing that allowed me to, again, messy side door in, which was I was storyboarding for places and ended up, I was running a commercial studio in Toronto doing feature storyboards and for films like Despicable Me and stuff, and doing commercials. And then they got short in like a 5-minute thing for Disney that it was just they had a shorts program that wasn't like, nobody would have ever seen this stuff, but that I was able to get in and direct because it was clear to the people that I was doing that I had all these skills and they could basically not hire somebody else to do it and they get a bang for their buck. And that ended up being the person who worked at Disney that saw what I was doing on that in terms of dedication and how much I was pouring into that, ended up being the development person at the studio that we got our first movie in. And we only got that movie because the original filmmakers on it had a blow up with the studio, all got let go. They didn't have any money left. And they're like, who do we know? And this woman who was the development exec was like, I know someone who bust their ass, threw my name in the ring. And then Bob came in and we rewrote the thing. And that's how our Hollywood career of a kind of above the line got started. But it was very, very messy. But it's like anytime there was a chance to do anything, we were always pushing in terms of not pushing to be allowed to, but pushing to do the best work we could. And that ended up eventually somebody needed help and you got pulled in and then you're off to the races. So yeah, I don't know that we can answer the question.
But you did answer it though, you know? No, but you know, like, I think you did answer it, which is that probably most of the time it's not clean, you know, and that people are slipping in through the side door, or that you have ensconced yourself in the world. You know, success is when preparation meets opportunity, you know, kind of thing, right? And I think that a lot of people believe that it's tantamount to like winning the Powerball. And maybe for some people it is, but I think for the majority of people, it's not. It's that they have done a lot of advanced work and then they just happen to find themselves in the right place at the right time. And they're able to capitalize on what it is that they've done in order to move into the next place. And, you know, so it's like you really climbed a ladder. I mean, that's really what you did. You climbed a ladder. And I think I think most people get into the business and they don't even realize it's like, because you've kind of slipped in it because you've been in the sandbox for so long. And then all of a sudden an opportunity comes and you just sidestep into it. And it's not like you won the Powerball.
Totally.
You just kind of slipped into it. And so, yeah, I mean, you know, it's like, I like to hear those stories because to me, that's the real story, you know, and now you're making A-list $100 million movies. I mean, that's pretty crazy, you know, but yet you guys did the advance work.
That's certainly the case. I agree. It's never felt like a Powerball win, and to that point, we still, and that was one of the things from your McHugh interview that resonated with Bob and I so much, is he kind of still talks about feeling like he's not really in Hollywood, and we're like, oh my God, thank God, because we certainly feel that same thing. Is we're like, okay, what's next? How do we like prove ourselves again? How do we? And that was it's like that I think it's Mark Duplass's thing of saying the cavalry is never coming, It's like that's really the feeling in this business of going, it's always the hustle. You never kind of there and people are like, welcome in. There is no people. You're just always kind of hustling.
Right. And still dreaming, it's like I work with some very, very big A-list actors, some of the biggest in the world, and they have dream projects, it's like their career will never, they will never truly feel satisfied despite Oscars and box office and this and that, unless they can do this one particular project that always seems out of reach for whatever reason. And so, even the Tom Cruises of this industry still dream, and every single time they start a new project, it's like you're starting all over again. Even somebody like Tom Cruise, you're literally starting all over again, like you're a newbie. You have to prove yourself all over again. It's a tough way to live in some ways, and
it is tough, but it sounds beautiful when you say it. I'm like, wow, that's great.
What an inspiring journey. Yeah, that's cool.
Well,
I mean,
go ahead, Bob.
Go ahead. No, I was just saying, just as we, Cal and I were starting a new script not that long ago, and, being on the first day of writing, we were like going, do we remember how to write scripts? And the answer is, of course we do. But it was just, going, we're starting from a blank page, a blank whiteboard. There's nothing that we had existing. And it's like, you eventually get going and you work on it a little bit a day, but that like one step at a time thing. But it's daunting no matter what. And then you get back into it. And then, like, hopefully by the end, you're like, this is the best thing we've ever written. And then you start again. And then it's like, it really is an emotional journey for yourself, because it is just, it's a challenging thing to face. And I think that, just even, the fact that we work as a team is certainly, for me, it's really, really, the ability to talk that thing through, because it feels like, we're just having an endless days long, months long, years long conversation about, like, how do we get this and piece it together. I feel like it's got to be that much more daunting if you're just facing a blank cursor on the screen by yourself and going, how do we get this done? So find a talented writing partner is certainly like, is very useful for that type of thing, because it's tricky.
And
How do you? No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think that having a writing partner, especially in your case, because you guys are almost like brothers, it seems, that it makes it first of all, you can collaborate with somebody, and then it's kind of like your script is like your child, because that there is another person in the world who cares about that project as much as you do. Where if you've written the script alone, then, there isn't anybody else in the world who loves that script as much as you do. And so I always find that having a writing partner can be incredibly motivating and helpful. Also, I think that there's the whole strengths and weakness thing, that usually one has a strength in an area where the other doesn't, and vice versa. And so do you find that any of that is true?
1,000%. In terms of strengths, we both can do everything, but we're working on the third Paw Patrol movie now that was just announced. And
congrats. That's exciting.
Thank you.
Very exciting.
And we just have a scene. Bob is particularly good at the characters having funny conflict with one another, very much in the, I don't know, Larry David school or whatever, right? Like those kind of scenes. And so I get giddy at the idea of going, oh my gosh, you have to do this. I want to see what you're going to do with this one. I think I'll do that. I can do those okay, and I can help edit those well. Bob is very good at that kind of comedy stuff. I think my strength probably lies in visual storytelling, even on the page, I will gravitate towards a kind of a strong emotional visual scenes wherever possible, or emotional scenes. That's the stuff that I'm most excited about. But again, both of us do both. One thing I thought might be, it just popped in my head while you were talking about working in a partnership. We've shared this before in terms of our process of how we actually write, and it's very unromantic, but some writers we've talked to have found it helpful. So if anyone's interested, here's like a 3-minute breakdown of our process. So we'll outline together broad strokes, whiteboard, figuring out the whole path that the story is going to take. And once we're kind of feeling good about that, we will actually break that down into scenes in terms of, this is the first scene, this is what needs to happen, this is where it needs to start and where it needs to end, and what the character's got to get, or whatever their driving motivation. And then once we've got that for the film kind of mapped out, and this is where I say it's unromantic, we literally put it into a spreadsheet, a shared like numbers doc, because we work on Mac, but like a Google Doc or whatever is fine. And we write, there's a column that says who's going to do it, and we go through and we're like, what would be Bob would be great at, or Bob will be like, I really want to do this. If someone's passionate about a specific scene, that means they get it. Rarely do we both feel like, we've got to have this scene. So we'll assign them all out for a bunch of the movie, and then our process is, rather than our goal is to try and make writing as painless as possible, because it's always a kind of like fear-based process. So our path is write whatever you're most excited about at the time, even if it's out of order, whatever. So you will just jump around, and when we've got a draft of it, of the scene, we'll kind of mark that area in the spreadsheet yellow, and we'll let them pile up. And then eventually we'll come back together and we'll read the scenes together. You're not allowed to read your own scene, because you can't, if it's not on the page, that's not how it's working. So the other person has to read it kind of blind, read it out loud, and we'll revise it together. And then once we've revised a scene, it gets marked to green and it goes into the script. And while that's not a romantic process, it ends up being a very predictable, manageable process for us to actually get a script up on its feet. So we'll go through that until we've got the whole spreadsheet in green, and then we've got ourselves a first draft. Then we'll go through out loud again, and we'll revise each scene as we go. And then at the end of that, that's draft one. And then as we go in, we get notes, or we have notes on the thing. We kind of do that whole thing again. We, turn the colors off areas on the spreadsheet where we need to do new things. We'll add notes to what needs to be done. Then we'll divide them up, who's going to do them. When you're done, you mark them yellow, get back together, read them out loud. The other person reads the other person's scene, revise together until you fill it all in again. And for us, systematizing the process of writing really helped us demystify the process, and not try and fight back against that, like, I need to be inspired, and the coffee needs to be just the right temperature, the sun needs to be coming up. We try and like fight back against that and systematize the process so that we can kind of produce with some level of consistency and process to it. So that's how we go through getting a script up on his feet.
I'm going to put systematize with featurize.
That's all we eyes as much as we can.
Exactly.
That's really interesting. Yeah, it's again, it's like everybody has their own system, right? I mean, there's no right way, there's no wrong way to do it, as long as it works. And clearly it works for you guys. But wow, no, like I would never have thought that was the way you would put a script together.
It's funny. It's the Stephen King book on writing was always like such a inspiration for us in early days. And he has this part in the book where he talks about like your trick to being inspired is to show up at the desk every day at the same time. And I whether or not that works for you. I internalize that as to go, I'm very much would be somebody who could lose a lot of time waiting to be inspired. And I took that to heart and was like, you know what? Show up and do the work and the inspiration will find you. And so we've tried to do as many things to make it kind of tactile steps for ourselves as we can. And then once you've got that, you can open things up for all sorts of kind of inspiration and different ways of working. And but it stops you from spending a year and having nothing to show for it and going, we didn't get anywhere, because at least we've got ourselves a little map, you know?
And I think that map, to that point of the outline, I mean, obviously we're huge outliners and we really like that. But then I find the outline kind of gives me permission to then dive into the scene. And then in the writing of the scene, all these new ideas come up and you go, okay, great, because you've got sort of your brainstorm bullet points. But then as you're writing, new stuff comes up and then that sparks an idea that Cal will have and everything. And so again, it is really, and to that point of breaking it down and going, what's a manageable chunk of writing? Because I think the other thing too is, you can't be too hard on yourself and go, I got to get 50 pages done today. The way everyone writes 50 screenplay pages in one day, it's going, if the goal is to do a few scenes, it's much more manageable. And then you really, again, you're kind of trying to be a little bit easy on yourself and keep that sense of play and that sense of creativity because you don't want to be overwhelmed with stress as you're also trying to do something really fun and trying to create this great world and this fun story. So the more you can kind of insulate yourself from that, it does actually, the irony is being very systemic about it allows you to be artistic when you get the chance to play.
And I think to Chris's point, that's what works for us. I mean, other people, everyone's got their own thing, but we've come to that over many years of trying to, Yeah,
again, it's like there are a lot of people that are always trying to force other writers into very specific kinds of boxes and the way that they should work. And it's like, if whatever you can do that gets you to fade out and you end up with a script that works, then it's a good system.
Totally.
It's a good system.
One other thing that I would also say too is our scripts change, like that first draft. And then when you say like the 8th or the 9th draft, it's a massive change. I think that's the other thing too. Like we really, it's not about just sort of taking the same thing and rewriting the same sentence over and over again. A lot of change happens in the course of those things. And again, I think it is one of those things of like, I mean, in animation, they talk about it as pencil mileage of drawing, where it's just the more you draw, the better you get. And I think it is a little bit like in terms of screenwriting as well, where you will never get to draft 8 without doing the first 7 drafts. And that's where, I mean, we just had something, pretty recently where we really had a great breakthrough that came on the 6th draft, and through all 5, we're never not trying to write the best script we can, but it was only after living with this thing for more than a year where, okay, now we got a whole new thing. It's radically changed, but so much better. And we would never have got there if we didn't take all those steps before. And that's why it is one of those things, just sitting around waiting for the idea. It never would have struck. I mean, again, just for us, that's not how we work. It was really about just getting to the 6th draft by doing the previous 5 drafts.
Right. It's a process, it's a process. I think people write a spec script and they think, like, this is my first draft and it's never getting any better. And even when you try to give somebody notes, sometimes they're very standoffish and they just don't realize that, this is going to change, especially if it goes into production, because now you have a director that wants to do a pass, a producer that wants to do a pass. You have actors that have all kinds of ideas. It's just, that's the process. So 8 drafts, but if 8 drafts gets you, like $100 million movie, sounds good to me. Ramesh?
I think it was Phil who asked this question. He said the first film had a G rating. The second one is PG. What kind of discussions did you have to sort of how to make it more mature and how far you could go? And did you have people sort of overseers looking to make sure everything was in line?
Or or like, do you even consider that, and then you just let the MPAA figure it out?
it's more like that one. I think the truth is, I think the first and second movie are reasonably similar in levels of intensity, but second movie has a lot more explosions, and I think that's why it got a PG. In terms of who we work with, we're in contact constantly with the team at Spin Master, who is the people who own and created Paw Patrol, and so they're on board for pushing this, and we're always working with them on, we think we should do this, and they'll go, okay, let's see it in boards. That sounds like it might be too much. So we kind of go back and forth, but we don't want to go too far either. So it's not adversarial at all. It's all of us want to create as intense and engaging an emotional experience at the theater as we possibly can without alienating our youngest viewers. So that's kind of the objective. We don't want to be so soft that 90% of the audience checks out of this thing because it's not engaging enough. So we're trying to find that line, and I think it's just lots of stuff blows up in the second movie, and I think they're just like, we've got to acknowledge that somehow. So luckily it hasn't hurt us at the box office or anything, which is nice.
One of my horror movies, which we knew would be an R rating, ended up getting an NC-17 from the MPAA. And you're like, what? And it was because of sound. So we actually had to cut like 6 seconds of sound in order to get an R rating, and that had nothing to do with the script. There isn't anything there. In fact, none of the filmmakers could have even have imagined that would be what it is. So, that ratings board can be kind of weird, and they have some kind of, yes, they do have guidelines, but then I think they also go by gut a little bit, and so it's odd. But PG, I mean, I think even, like the Pixar movies are now.
They all are.
Yeah.
It's wild because back in the day, you're like, Lion King was G, and you're like, the uncle kills the dad, and in front his son, sees this stuff, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's nothing like that in our films. So it's certainly, I think, over the years, G has become only the softest stuff now. So yeah, to that point, all the Pixars, all the DreamWorks, everything's almost PG now.
Yeah. Ramesh, I'm sorry, Ramesh.
No. Christian wants to know, is there a difference between writing live action and an animated feature, and can animated features deal with difficult issues children are dealing with in their lives, and how you go about handling that?
Well, Bob and I have never written a movie that's been made in live action. We wrote one spec a while ago. Then that was mostly just for ourselves. We didn't really take that out. So I don't know that we can answer if it's with any authority, if it's the same or not. We certainly try and tackle the story and the themes in the same way. I would say animation maybe has a little less subtext than live action films, just because of the amount of subtlety and communication that you can get from an actor's face. Animation can do a lot of that, but it's not the same level of complexity, I would say. I mean, someone will probably take me to task for that, but that would be my instinct. If I think about really complex, ambiguous live action movies, you see less of that in animation because the ambiguity can come off as not communicating clearly through the animations. So I would say that. What was the second part of that question?
Dealing with children's issues that children are dealing with. Yes.
Yeah, I would say, I think the films that we make, we would deal with those issues in a way that was palatable for kids. We wouldn't deal with them in the way an adult would be talking about issues that kids would have. We would try and find a way to deal with the same issues, but deal with it in a kind of simplified, understandable way for kids. You have anything to add to that, Bob?
No, just that I think that yeah, for our younger viewers, these are massive issues in their lives, and I mean we're tuned to that. Yeah, you tackle it a little differently in a film that was like an R-rated drama for adults, but I think that we're trying to have something that, as Cal mentioned earlier, hopefully resonates with from everyone all the way to our youngest viewers to a parent or older sibling who takes them. And so I think that like even though it's animation. I mean, we love animation and feel like the art form has quite a lot of latitude and flexibility. And so even for films aimed at younger people, like we've been making with the Paw Patrol films, we still want them to be emotionally impacted and feel something.
Yeah.
Uh, Cal, did being a storyboard artist help you when you started directing? Um, or,
Yes. Yeah. More than anything. Sorry, was there more to that? I got
no,
excited
no,
and just jumped in.
no.
Yes, more than anything. I think the ability to imagine what you want to see on a blank page and express that is hugely, hugely valuable. And I still draw all the time, mostly just scribbles now, and hand it to people who are much better artists than I am. But it's the idea still is hugely valuable. Is going, how do you see this fitting together, and how do you see the shots working together? And I think one of the things as time has gone on, and I've done more movies, the power of the juxtaposition of not shots within a scene, that is a thing, but scene to scene is one of the huge areas that we've found. And it starts at the script stage, is like that's like gasoline on the fire for launching the story forward. If you can really find an exit image or idea of this scene going into the starting image or idea of the next scene, it's like the movie rockets forward, and you cut out all the boring stuff in between. You get this wonderful juxtaposition. So we're always talking about that in writing, especially because if it's not there, we don't end up storyboarding it. But those I working from those images certainly was a huge value in the beginning. And I think even in our writing process now, I'll sometimes do a little scribble for Bob and be like, what if they round the corner and they see something like this? And it's, or, a little scribble, and will kind of helps us communicate about what the visual might be. And then it might change over time, but we'll go from there.
I think just to add on to that too, one thing that we're doing as we are writing that script, and I mean, is almost looking for those iconic images of like, E.T. flying across the moon, the bicycles like going in this film, there are going to be 20, 30, 40, kind of these amazing images that would represent the movie, and kind of going, if from a script stage we can be thinking about those, then when it gets to the later further stage, and that's something that we will, like Cal will do a rough sketch in that, and we'll hand it off to a storyboard artist or a painter who can kind of make that. But honestly, for us, as we're building a film in a screenplay, we're also building it visually, and we're thinking about that, and we're kind of creating artwork that will, when we see that art, it can help us inspire us in our writing. And it's again the type of thing of having talented collaborators and people who are really kind of thinking visually about this type of stuff. It's always starting from the script, but it feeds right back into itself, and it's again, it's not segmented different areas. It's each department inspires each other department, and so even to us at the writing, we're not just we're creating art before we're finished the first draft.
Are you are any of your animators overseas?
Yeah, we had on this last movie. So we had a team of about 50 animators in Bangalore who did a bunch of animation on the film. And we worked with Micros in Montreal, is the animation studio, who is owned by Technicolor. And Technicolor has a studio in Bangalore as well. And we were able to really work seamlessly because it was one studio between the two locations. And they really, as I said, the crew got very big, and we got up to about 250. And so even staffing that many artists in Montreal was impossible. So it was such a wonderful gift to be able to access all that talent over there. And the plans, I think, will be to do that again in the future. They have an incredible team of artists that are so hungry to be working in features over there. So we had a great experience on this one.
Are they planning to keep Paw Patrol 3 at a $30 million budget in and around that again?
I don't know the ins and outs of that. I think they're still working. My guess is that with inflation, the cost of doing things and stuff, it'll probably creep a little bit. But I think my guess is, and I don't want to speak to the business side because that's not my wheelhouse, but these have been great for everybody involved, and nobody wants to let these budgets creep so much that it becomes another huge risk. Like right now, they've got a winner every time at bat, and that's rare in these days. And I think for us, as I mentioned before, that's really our wheelhouse. Is we do great with making these feel a little bit bigger than what we've got, and so it ends up being a good marriage. And same with the animation studio at Micros. They really know how to stretch each dollar, and so it's been good.
Definitely seems like that is a sweet spot, that is a budgetary sweet spot for this franchise, and then everybody makes money on it, and as a result, it keeps you guys working because there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
I do think sometimes people see this kind of obsession with box office as kind of a crass thing, but for those of us in the business, it means we get to work again. To your point, it's like our movie crossed $100 million at the box office. That means we probably get to make another one. And I think sometimes people think it's an obsession with the money. It's really an obsession with the options for creativity in the future if you continue to be a good business bet for the people who are putting up the money. So yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah. So good for you guys.
Thank you.
Ramesh?
How many drafts did you go through for Paw Patrol 2?
Bob, do you want to answer? It's really a process. You want to?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that there probably were 8 or 9 officially issued drafts, but to that point, it's we're working in a sequence by sequence basis. We might rewrite something 10 times. We might try 20 different lines, type of thing. So it's less about, again, with the whole kind of filmmaking process where we're starting and where we're moving through. It's there's not just this draft and then that's the one we work on until the next draft is issued.
I mean, Bob and I will sit in editorial together and go, wouldn't it be great if, and we're writing things down, and then we go home and we write that page and we hand it out. So is that a new draft?
Yeah,
or is it a new page? So it kind of goes and goes and goes.
Right.
Yeah.
We feel like we're writing for the entire, this was, 2.5 years on this last movie. And I mean, from the start to the end, I don't know when the absolute last word was written, but it was, in post-production sometime for sure. So the writing never stops throughout the entire film.
Yeah. Wow. Ramesh, maybe 2 more questions?
Someone asked, you talked about star casting, but what happens when the movie plays abroad and those voices are dubbed, for instance?
That's a part of the process that we're not involved in at all, and it's always a question mark for us. Is like, what is that experience? I'm sure every filmmaker feels that with the dub. What's the intention behind the line? What's this totally different movie other people are getting? So yes, it's oftentimes our English cast will be a lot of star talent, and then overseas frequently it's star talent as well, but it's star talent in their countries that are kind of relevant to that language.
Yeah. That came up with the Evan Marlowe movie, remember?
Yeah.
Where he had Jordan Peele do a voice, and we were like, that's great, but then he was like, yeah, but when it gets dubbed, it's somebody else, and and you lose that. And you're like, oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned earlier, but I just want to clarify this: is are the powers that be, the people over you, your bosses, are they the ones who are saying we really want Kim Kardashian in this, or, we really want this person, or here's a list of actors, or, we want to go out to these actors first? Or
Yeah, this is a good question. So I think it's a mix of both. We'll have a character and we will oftentimes be like, we think this is this kind of character. We think these are the actors that could do it. That ends up being, there are lots of voices that weigh in at that point, both at Spin Master, who owns Paw Patrol, and at Paramount. They have strong opinions from a marketing perspective on who's going to do a lot for the movie, I would say. And then, for example, like if somebody like Kim wants to be part of the movie, you find a way to make that happen, because as filmmakers, the reach that she has in the world to have people writing about the movie. And so we have a really practical side of that too, where we want the movie to be seen by as many people as possible. So we're all on the same team with that. But yes, I think for some of those kind of key casting roles, also actors and actresses that have relationships with Paramount and have done well for them in other movies, those are more likely to be, favorites of the studio, that but it's a good, healthy working relationship. It's not that we just get to pick whoever we want, but by the same token, they don't force people on you that you're like, I don't think that's going to work. So we work together to find a cast that everybody's excited about.
I mean, one small. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
No, Bob, go ahead.
No, just one small addition to that was when we had, there's one line in the film, which is, it's in the trailer. It's a bit of a spoiler, but it doesn't matter. We're not, there's a talking cat who has one single line in the film. And when we were writing it, we were like, we were writing it for Chris Rock, and we were going, this is like, as Cal said,
He'll never do it.
He'll never do it. And then we said, this is our dream would be Chris Rock. And then they were able to get Chris Rock. And so he came in and we recorded with him in New York for one line, and he was hilarious. He came in and had fun and played in the studio, and just sort of like going, that's one of those things where the strength and the size of this allowed us to, in that case, get a dream actor for one role who was basically just doing it as a favor. But, the movie's that much funnier because of it.
Right. Were you disappointed and disappointed is the wrong word, because I don't want to get into politically incorrect territory here. But the movie was released during the SAG strike, and as a result, a lot of your actors couldn't go out and promote the film. And I know that, of course, you support SAG, but just sort of, were you saddened by it that they couldn't go out and?
1,000%, like you said. Of course, we're 100% in support of everything they're doing and completely understand it. But just selfishly, just as somebody who worked on a movie, to be there with your friends that worked on the movie with you and be able to share that with them, that was sad to not be able to do. And on our first movie, COVID ended our premiere right before there was another kind of rise, so we didn't do a premiere the first time. So we have yet to watch one of our movies with the team that made it. So that was sad, but I think the small kind of selfish bit of going, oh, it'd be great to all be together and have people out in the world, is trumped 10 times over by going, this is a bigger battle for the future of people being able to make a living in the arts that trumps all of this. But yes, as a filmmaker, you want to be there with the family that you made it with, for sure.
I did read that they did some very kind of interesting ways to promote the film, like people could bring their animals, or
they did a Guinness Book of World Records breaking screening for dogs that had 200 plus dogs screen the film with their owners in the big outdoor thing. So they got creative to try and still promote the movie around that.
That's great. Yeah, but yet on the flip side, you saved money in all of that publicity stuff in many ways. I know that Denzel's Equalizer 3 came out, and you know, they ended up saving a lot of money because they didn't do premieres, they didn't do junkets, they didn't do all that stuff. Antoine went out, but you know, the other actors didn't, and so you know, it helps. Every little bit saved, but who knows how much could have been earned more.
That's the case that I would make, is going when you've got huge stars that people care about, to not be able to use yes, their talents on screen, but also their voice and their reach is so valuable.
I mean, how many people follow Kim Kardashian on Instagram or Twitter?
It's,
you know,
it's
right?
certainly 100+ million.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know
like
what the number is. It's massive. Though.
Yeah.
Bob will probably. I can see your hands moving, Bob. You're gonna give
no.
us
I think it's over 300 million, and you know, I mean, it's one of those things.
Yeah,
but it's a lot.
Was she
but,
not allowed to tweet about the movie? Huh? I don't think that she was even allowed to tweet about it. Was she?
I don't know if it was allowed or she chose not to, but certainly she was very respectful of the strike.
But just think.
Yeah,
like, you know, we won't go there. But you know something? Look, you guys have. I mean, it's been great. But the first film, kind of, you know, like on the heels of COVID, this during the strike, you know, I would say that, you know, you guys have bad luck, but you really don't have bad luck.
We can't complain, that's for sure.
No, we feel like it's pretty good luck.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly. Okay, Ramesh, one more question, because we can't
I'm done.
these. We can't. Okay, because we can't keep these lovely Canadians. You know, I gotta say, the Canadians are just they are. You, by the way, I didn't tell you this. I bore any time we have a Canadian on, I bore them with this. This is a little fact. My ancestor was I think he was the 6th Prime Minister of Canada.
Oh, really?
His name was his name was Sir Charles Tupper. His mother was Marjorie Lockhart, and you know, so we had like the same, like, you know, great grandfather, though he had a couple of fewer greats than I did. And all my people, all the Lockharts, are from Nova Scotia.
Oh, amazing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So look at that. So, you know, I got a tiny bit of Canadian in me. I mean, I can even sing, you know, "Oh Canada." I won't. But you know.
let's have an "Oh Canada" to see us out. That'll be maybe not.
Every time I sing on these things, I get pinged by YouTube. You know, we have to you know, blank out the song or something. I'm like, really? Come on. Even my poor version.
Too professional.
Is there anything that we should have asked you that we didn't? Anything that you want to say? Anything at all?
Not for me. This was great. I honestly, when Bob told me that you'd reached out for us to be on, it was such a thrill. We watch so many of the interviews that you do, and it's kind of a pinch me moment to be on this. We're like, wait, what are we doing? We're on the wrong side of the camera here. Like, we're meant to be watching. But this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for having us.
Believe me, we are pinching ourselves. And congratulations on the film. I mean, again, Bob, you know, as a reminder, a member of the Inside Pitch, and you know, so
I was reading it before when it was still a blog. I was reading it, and then when it moved over to Facebook, I was like, I better sign up for this Facebook to keep getting all the Inside Pitch information, and it served me well.
And look at you now. Look at
exactly
this could be you, people. This could be you. At any rate, we look forward to Paw Patrol 3 and seeing so much more from both of you in the future. Thank you so much for spending your Saturday with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Take care. Bye.
All right. That's it. We're done.
Awesome.